Hey, good morning. This is Dawn Thompson with Improving Birth, and I'm here having a conversation with Hermine Hayes-Klein from Human Rights in Childbirth, who, by the way, we just got back from Women Deliver in Copenhagen, which was the largest global conference on women's health and equality in the world. There were almost 6,000 attendees and 147 countries represented. So to say that it was impactful would probably be an understatement, wouldn't you say, Hermine?
Absolutely. Put it all in perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the thing that became really clear for me is the fact that from a global perspective, the eyes are all on the United States. And I think when we're talking about doing advocacy work, and particularly what Improving Birth is doing through the rallies and social media campaigns, that we really see the importance of what we're doing and how it affects globally. The representative from the World Health Organization asked if we would share our rally coordinator handbook. That started out 5 years ago as a little checklist that's now 27 pages after doing it multiple years, and we edit it every year. But that they saw it as a great resource to give out to other countries that are looking to do similar advocacy work that we're doing here in the U.S. So it's pretty exciting. That was exciting. So tell me about, we wanted to talk about the thing that moved. We had so many conversations this weekend, Hermine, or this last week. I keep thinking it was a weekend, but we had so many great conversations while we were there, and the importance of people coming together annually and regularly. And I just wanted you to kind of touch on that.
Sort of the stuff we were talking about building the global movement from the grassroots to the grass topped.
Exactly.
I think that what we were talking about in Copenhagen was based on our maternity care, and we both believe that the source for women's care and also for policies for maternity care should be based on the voices of women, that women should be in the center of those conversations, and that understanding the problems with maternity care should be based on the voice. So what we try to do in our work, as you know, is to sort of create platforms by which women can speak up, use their voice, what they're and we were talking about just some of the techniques that we've seen that we try to sort of create and to be effective for that, such as, of course, the Improving Birth rallies being this moment when birth activists across the nation can step out at the local level with their local colleagues to talk about, to show their face publicly and talk about what they're doing. And you were expressing that what you're always trying to do with Improving Birth is to sort of strengthen those efforts and strengthen the community-based advocacy. So we're talking about what that can look like. And so I think one of the ideas we were talking about that made you say, we should do a Google Hangout on this so that we can share this conversation more widely is the fact that between those annual rally moments, there should be community meetings of birth activists, so that their annual rally is not the only opportunity that communities have to really come together and share time. So again, back to sort of our shared vision, I think that we both believe that it's not our job as a national organization. So Human Rights in Childbirth is an international organization, and what we try to do is to connect all of those grassroots activist organizations that exist at national levels, so that believing that in any civil rights movement, and that where this maternity care issue is a civil rights movement, the rights holder has to stand up for their own rights, but they also need the support of legal advocates that can help them navigate the system and get to those parliamentary, Ministry of Health, legislative meetings, help them bring lawsuits when they need to seek accountability for the violation of their rights. But that we don't, and then you do that nationally. You're building a network of all the national, over all the state level and town level groups that care about improving birth, and then just trying to support them through build them into a national U.S. movement that can really make that change. I think we both believe that it's not our job to tell people what the problem is, and it's not our job to tell people what the solution is. That we trust women to be able to say what the problem is at their local level, and then our job is to create a way that they can be heard, not to talk at them, but to elevate their voices as the primary source of authority on what the need is in their local level. So across the U.S., it's like some communities, their primary issues might be the VBAC bans at their local hospital.
Right.
In some, it might be the sort of witch hunt on unlicensed midwives, and there's no licensure for CPMs. And some, it might be some other issue that we know is of great importance. But, so there's going to be a diversity of issues at the same time that there's universal concerns. So what we were talking about is the rallies are such a strong moment to show publicly what women are concerned with, but
right.
that those groups should need an opportunity to meet, I would say at least quarterly throughout the year between the rally, ideally once every month or two. And that can just look like a potluck at somebody's house, or a meeting in the park when the weather's good, meeting at the local, church or synagogue, or wherever it is that you can find a space, birth center, whatever. But that the real power is those meetings. The real power is women coming together, sitting in a circle, and having a safe space where they can share their birth story that turned them into a birth activist, whether it's an empowered birth and they want to make sure other women have access to empowered birth, or whether they were disempowered in birth and were traumatized and they need to be able to share that story with people who aren't going to say, oh, but you've got a healthy baby.
Right.
Why are you still talking about the birth? And that just coming together and sharing stories helps people to see the patterns, like how their births were similar, that are their real community problems. Maybe there's only one hospital there's only a few docs there, and those docs are not, or maybe the docs are awesome, but they don't have the support they need within their hospital system or their insurance system. And that what happens organically when women get into a room to have a meeting like this is that they figure out what needs to be done. And you can't tell what those solutions are before you start going to the meetings. But if they have these moments throughout the year to meet, then by the time they have the rally in September, that's their moment where they turn as a group to the public.
Right.
And then they share what it is that the concern is and raise awareness publicly. But that rally is going to be strengthened if over the course of the year between rallies, that community is bonding, talking, and working together.
Well, and I think that's something that I've struggled with, is really having people understand the importance of that then public display, right? Mm-hmm. The reality is that when we're doing the meetings every month, right, we are speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir, so to speak, right? We hear that phrase a lot. And then the rally gives us the opportunity to tell our story, raise our voice to the public and those who are caring for us, those who are policymakers, those who are in the media, those, the list goes on, and it suddenly opens our communication from beyond just talking to the consumer. Just talking to ourselves, and really potentially having some impact and being able to open dialogue. Some of our locations in the past have now continued dialogue with their providers in their area, continued dialogue with the hospital administrators, and really starting to make an impact because of the conversations that they've had. And I think the other thing that's important, at least in my mind, that it's hard to measure, is the fact that we get so many stories done in the media at that time. There's an average of 250 news articles and or TV interviews or TV spots that happen at every single rally. And 5 years ago, there was virtually nothing in the media at all about cesarean rates and induction rates and maternal mortality. And now we're seeing it everywhere all the time. And, you know, that's what happens when you do events like these to create that trend, you know, to get it trending, the subjects trending. So I really loved your analogy of that, like how, you know, obviously there's all these organizations in their communities gathering, you know, there's ICANN and Birth Network National and, you know, I could go on, I'm sure there's much more, but they're all meeting together, but they're not necessarily coming together for this public display that could potentially really make an impact.
Yeah, there's this fragmentation of a movement, and there are meetings that happen, but they're not connected. And in order to build an effective movement, we need to be connected. And so I think it's important not to undermine the value of what people call preaching to the choir, because
that's true.
It's, you know what I mean? And it's not just that we're just doing that. It's first of all, it's not preaching, because nobody's preaching at each other. It's a sharing circle, and that is how the movement is built. So those moments like of coming together, the value of the meeting is coming into a room and discovering that there's a choir when you've been singing alone. This is friends who are not birth activists, and they're like, girl, do you care about anything else? You know, we've all been there. And I remember the first time I went to a meeting in Holland, it was, you know, I wanted to go talk to one mother, the mother of a twins mother who I had heard had some issues around her birth, and I wanted to go talk to her. And then I heard, well, if you want to meet her, go to the meeting of the Geboortebeweging, which was a group of doulas and mothers and midwives that were meeting once a month in Holland. And so I did, and it changed my life to walk into that room. It changed my life to sit. Until that time, I had never met other people who cared about these issues as much as I did, and who knew even more than I did about them. And from those meetings came, and the conversations that we were having there, came the first conference on human rights and childbirth in The Hague. That just happened organically from us being like, gosh, you know, what we really need is to get all the Dutch stakeholders together to talk about women's rights and what does that mean for care. And then my boss at the university said we could do it there, and that it's an international university. So it was like, wow, we could really invite more people, not just the Dutch, but international people. And I never would have a million years seen that as a solution, but it's led to this nonprofit that's now growing, you know, into a global movement, all out of just meeting a circle of women preaching to each other.
Right. I mean, I really value that perspective, because of course, when you say it like that, I think to myself that that's how Improving Birth started, was, and really through social media, because I thought that the issues in maternity care were just only happening in my community of San Diego, because we had high C-section rates, because there were a lot of women who were, you know, we lived in a high-end posh community, or, you know, whatever. I made all kinds of excuses for why it was happening here. And it wasn't until I got onto social media and started joining all of these doula groups that are online and having these conversations and realizing that it was rampant. It was everywhere. It was happening to everywhere. And suddenly realizing, like, man, if I could somehow gather all of these voices around the country, that's exactly how the Rally to Improve Birth started.
Exactly.
How can I gather all these voices using social media for us to stand up together and say no more?
Yes.
That's exactly how I started. So you're right. The preaching thing, I guess I just associate that theme of, you know, you're right. Here it is now 5 years later.
Right.
And
well,
you know,
and then as you're evolving your strategies for how to achieve that goal of helping women to sort of stand up together and express and demand the improvement of maternity care, then what we've and as we're always trying to sort of evolve, you know, our organizations and what's effective, it's what I think what's clear is that the rally isn't enough, because otherwise, you know, people don't even know who they're going to meet there, and that's you know, that's a different kind of motivation than if you know all your girlfriends who you meet with on a regular basis are counting on you showing up, just like you should have at all the other meetings. And that you all together, it's not like, well, so what's your concern, or how did you get into this issue? The rally's not the moment for the conversation. Ideally, the ideal is that this group is strong, is united, and as you and I were talking about, it's like in the meetings, they're in a circle, you know, and they're turning inward in the circle and sharing with each other and talking and strategizing. And then the rally becomes the moment when they turn out, when they're all in a line, sort of holding hands together, public action together.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I felt like I know we've got a hard stop in a few minutes, Hermine. I would really love for you to read what you wrote for the Women Deliver conference. Hermine had the opportunity to be on this incredible panel about disrespect in childbirth, and what she wrote is just ridiculously important and powerful. And I'd like to give her this platform to read that.
You want me to do that, Dawn? You want me to just read my speech right
would
now?
Would you please? Yeah, it was so good. It moved me so much.
Thank you, my dear. Having you sitting there in the front row moved me so much and gave me confidence. So thank you. All right. So this is my Women Deliver speech that I wrote out so that I would not forget words. Although one day I hope that they'll all just be able to flow out of me without writing it down. Because I wrote it down, I can recite it here. So this was a panel on respectful maternity care, and it was titled "Compassionate and People-Centered Care: Why We Need It." And it was a panel with Megan Boren from the World Health Organization, who's done some amazing research there globally about the mistreatment of women, and she could really lay out what does that look like. That it looks like physical abuse, verbal abuse, non-consented care, discriminatory care, just to name a few. And then it had a doctor from Yemen talking about the stress on providers and how that can lead to disrespect and abuse, not just.
She was amazing.
She was amazing. And she wasn't, the folks that were on that panel talking about the provider side of the picture were not doing so in a way to justify abuse. They were just like, how can we understand the problem so that we can solve the problem? And there was a doctor from Mozambique who works to ensure the human right to birth companionship, which is goes to show that there really are people in the developing world. Doulas are not just a concept for the privileged, just like human rights and informed consent are not just a concept for the privileged, but that what we saw is that people are really using these same strategies like the doula in all different kinds of settings. And then the CEO of White Ribbon Alliance was on this panel too. And the subtitle of the panel said, respectful maternity care is a woman's right, not a luxury. Ensuring that women are not only satisfied with their care, but have a positive birth experience can be the catalyst to ensuring that they survive and thrive. So I read that because, in a way, some of what I said in my speech was a response to that framing of the issue. Okay?
Yes, do it.
Right. Human beings, like all mammals, need to feel safe in order to give birth. Childbirth as a physiological process is powered by hormones, and those hormones are strongly affected by the birthing woman's emotions, which are in turn affected by her perception of whether she is giving birth in a safe environment. What women need to feel safe will vary from individual to individuals, and across cultures as well. Some women will need to feel safe laboring naked. Some will need to be covered to feel safe. Some feel safe in a space where they can be very quiet and peaceful. Some need to be able to move, dance, sing, or scream. Some women will need their mother with them to feel safe. Some will need their man. There is no reason why maternity care cannot be constructed in a way that meets each woman's needs to feel safe during birth. And yet, in many systems around the world, sacrifice feeling safe and even being safe in order to access the safety that medical backup provides. Widespread reports of disrespect and abuse, dehumanized, traumatizing treatment, and violations of women's rights to privacy and dignity show that women are giving birth in environments in which they cannot feel safe, because, in fact, they are not safe. The recognition of preventable maternal mortality as a human rights issue was a huge step forward for women's sexual and reproductive health and rights. But when we only recognize the right to survive as important for childbirth, the violation of women's other human rights is rendered invisible. Women in both the developed and developing world are organizing to speak out about systems of care that dehumanize and traumatize them at their moment of greatest vulnerability. They are demanding recognition of their rights, not only to access health care and to survive childbirth, but their rights to autonomy as informed consent and refusal, to privacy, to dignity, to nonviolent and non-discriminatory treatment in labor and birth. The human rights framework takes women beyond asking providers to please give them individualized, nonviolent care, but requires the state to enforce women's human rights as legal rights that must be respected in policy and practice. In some nations, women's groups have passed laws naming the abuse of women in childbirth as obstetric violence, and brought legal actions that describe their experiences in those terms. It is notable that the systems of care in which women are passing laws against obstetric violence are those with some of the world's highest cesarean section rates, like Central and South America. The global cesarean section pandemic is in itself a form of obstetric violence. In many cities and nations in both the developed and developing worlds, women who can access care are churned through cesarean section assembly lines, while women from marginalized communities in the same nation are left to die preventable deaths. Is this equity? Media reports on the C-section pandemic often claim that women want all these surgeries. Studies show that's not true. Women want a healthy birth, and they want to know that the medical system will meet them at their need and have surgery available to support them. They don't. Economic studies all over the world connect providers' financial and time convenience incentives to the massive increase in surgical deliveries. The money that healthcare systems are wasting on the surgical delivery of healthy babies from healthy women could be directed toward underserved women and closing gaps in women's reproductive health. Women and the generation of children being born by surgery, human rights issues. The right to respectful, nonviolent support in childbirth is not the request for a positive birth experience.
Yes.
Framing these issues in terms of birth experience runs the risk of trivializing them and creating a false dichotomy between the experience of care versus health and safety. The issues that we were talking about here are in fact about health and safety and are a matter of life and death. The section rate passes 50% and approaches 100% in many facilities around the world. The global movement for women's health and rights needs to ask, when are we going to stand up and say, no more? Why are we letting this happen to ourselves and our babies? Why are we letting this happen to each other? What would maternity care look like if it recognized not only the right to survive childbirth, but the full spectrum of human rights that every woman has and that she carries with her into labor and birth? What would it look like if every woman could feel safe and be safe while she brought her baby into the world? That's it, Dawn.
Just kills me. I love it. I know.
They gave me 4 minutes.
I know.
I didn't.
I love it. I love it so much.
Thank you, darling.
It's why we rally, right? It's why we rally.
We share a vision.
Yeah.
This is it. Every woman, it's not rocket science. And I remember at the end they asked, if you were queen of the world, what would be your magic bullet? And it was like, well, recognition of the human rights, but also knowledge of physiology. And really just being clear that like these systems of care are they're not constructed on the real physiological needs of women and babies in childbirth. They're constructed on a model of like extraction. They're constructed on a mechanical model of childbirth in which the woman is really not an active participant, and there's no understanding of oxytocin and of her hormone and adrenaline and her, the significance of her state of mind. But if we would just like the cord clamping, right? Like once we just recognize there's a physiology here, can we support the physiology? Because if I'd thrown another sentence into there, it would have been the only legitimate aim of any maternal health is to optimize healthy outcomes and catch those few cases of pathology, right? But optimizing healthy outcomes is in piece in a model that's out of the US. So optimizing healthy outcomes means ensuring that every woman feels safe so that she then has the maximum chance of getting into the labor zone and birthing her baby, so that fear isn't going to create a problem in her birth.
Yes, I agree. Obviously, we're in the same boat. I think there's so much work to be done, and there's lots more discussion to be had. But I think that the main thing that I loved about that speech was like, when are we going to say enough is enough? And I think, what Improving Birth is working really hard to do is give people that platform to say enough is enough. And it's not, we're not looking at one of the quotes that I love from the Women Deliver was that, you know, there's a mistaken belief system in obstetrics, in birth in general, in facility-based birth. There is they believe a lie. That's what I think the quote says. They believe a lie, and it's our job to stand shoulder to shoulder and discuss that lie. And never in a million years do I want to vilify the medical industry. There are a few that deserve to be vilified, but the majority of them believe that they're doing all of these things for the betterment of their patients. And we've just got to come together and have these discusussions and figure out how to reframe the maternity care system, because right now it's not working. It's not working.
And you know, an idea that just occurred to me this morning, I was reflecting on just some really positive postpartum. I was thinking about some of the conversations that we had at Women Deliver about sort of reconstructive surgery that can be needed for women, after childbirth, of like, because some, things move around, things don't always heal right, and so often I think, what would women have done before we had access to medicine, or what they do in places where they don't have access to medicine when they're carrying around serious issues after childbirth, and that just underscores the value of and the need for medical obstetrics. We need it. It's hugely valuable. It's changed the world, and it's changed women's lives, and massively for the better. The only problem is the medical management of healthy birth.
Yes.
That's really our only problem.
Yes.
Needs do arrive. Even then, women should be treated with respect. They should be treated, their rights should be respected. But I mean, and that's ultimately, I think, the conversation we want to go for with is just being clear that we really see the value of you. Of course we do. We need you. You're irreplaceable. But the mistake was the idea that only doctors can understand childbirth, and only doctors should manage childbirth, and the eradication of midwifery in the U.S. in particular. But I mean, in other countries too, the centralization of power over maternity care in the medical management of labor.
Yes. Well,
but one more thing, Dawn.
Yes.
Another thought that occurred to me is, like, you and I having this call right now is in a way just what we're talking about, that we had this whole week-long meeting sharing a hotel room together in Copenhagen, and then this comes out of it, and I don't live in the same place and we work nationally. We are also living testament to the value of those moments of coming together physically, talking things through, brainstorming, and then when we do meet at some meeting, more effective working together than if we weren't talking or meeting at any other point, at the AABC national standards meeting or whatever. Like,
right.
we would discover our solidarity there instead of already being really clear on our solidarity and able to act from that place.
That's true. Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I appreciate the relationship that I've had an opportunity to build with you, and I think that there's no doubt we'll continue to move forward and work together. And I hope that people watching this will come and visit Improving Birth and attend a rally, and also visit Human Rights in Childbirth. They've got a great active Facebook page, and Hermine writes a fantastic blog. She actually wrote her speech in a blog post, so feel free to go over there and share away with that. And
we're also having a summit, a reproductive justice summit this Thursday, where I'll meet Dawn again in Los Angeles. But folks can check it out on our website, and there's a way to live stream it.
Live stream it. Yeah, that's right. Do you want to give a little snippet about what that's about? Will you?
Yeah, this is a summit on the human rights of women in U.S. maternity care, and we're focusing on building the solution from the reproductive justice platform. And so the event is really going to bring together, grassroots activist leaders from across the U.S. who are working for the human rights of women of color, of LGBTQ individuals, of Native Americans, and working in different parts of the U.S. on issues related to vulnerable communities, and with different approaches to the solutions. And together we're going to, after a morning panel of people that can describe sort of the concerns different communities are facing and different approaches to solutions, we are all together going to write a consensus statement on the human rights of women in U.S. maternity care and calls to action to end the problems. And hopefully in the process, increase our solidarity as a movement so that we can really find that common ground and all work together. And I think the reproductive justice approach to U.S. maternity care really is built on the idea that you really have to tend to the needs of the most vulnerable people in the community, because once they're good, everybody's good.
That's right. That's right.
So let's start there. And I'm really excited to see you there, Dawn. And people in the LA area can show up last minute and register on the spot, or you could come by Zoom.
Great. Cool. Thanks so much for your time, Hermine. I love you.
Thank you, Dawn. Love you too. I'll see you Thursday.
Okay, we'll see you Thursday. And everybody else, please come visit our website, improvingbirth.org and humanrightsandchildbirth.org, right? It's .org, not .com, correct?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure. And then, please consider our rally registration is open. Please consider a rally location in your community. And
I'll be there at the Portland rally.
Sweet. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.